Let's get to some tabletop news for the week. We've got a couple of news stories. Remember that if you have news that you'd like us to talk about, send it on to us over at our Discord channel. You can find that at shadowcasters.network/Discord. You can get a link to get in there and drop some news items in there, and we'll put it into the show. But right now, let's get to the news. First up, I got an email, and it's about a convention. We've been talking recently about COVID and conventions, and Origins Game Fair has rescheduled. Did you guys hear about this? Origins rescheduled.
Yes,
I did. I was excited about it, to be frank.
It is exciting, and I wanted to briefly discuss why that's exciting. To start with, well, let me give the details. They've normally Origins Game Fair, which is in Columbus, Ohio. Normally they do their con. Usually it's always Father's Day weekend, isn't it? Which is June.
Yeah, around there.
Yeah. And every time that I've been or thought about going, it was on Father's Day weekend, so that's why I assumed that. But that's at the beginning of June, and it's not going to be then for probably obvious reasons because of COVID and all the other cons being canceled. But they have rescheduled it for September 30th to October 3rd of this year. And some of the details here, I'm gonna give those to you. It says that September 30th to October 3rd, they say safety is their primary concern, and they believe holding Origins later in the year provides the best path to have an in-person event this year. They're working with convention organizers, developing guidelines. They're going to require face masks, social distancing, temperature checks, hand sanitizing stations. All of that sounds very promising. Now, I will not be able to make it, but I think if I was in a position to more flexibly be able to go, like if I had known about it sooner, I might have strongly considered. Are any of you guys thinking about going, given the details about it being later in the year, and presumably more people have been vaccinated, and with all these precautions that they're going to be taking?
I'm almost certainly going to go, given the change in date. Yeah, I feel pretty confident that everything will be in place for my safety and for my family's safety. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Given the caveat that I expect to be vaccinated against COVID by that time, hopefully well before, we'll see, fingers crossed. But at least by then, I should have been vaccinated against COVID, and when that happens, I'm going back to the cons. So I'm very pleased that instead of being canceled, Origins is pushed back to a later date. I'm curious if Gen Con's going to, or if they have the flexibility to consider doing such a thing as well. Because I think Gen Con might be a little too soon. It's hard to say.
Probably will be, especially given the rollout of the vaccine. But
administration change might result in faster rollouts. We'll see, though.
Theoretically,
yeah.
We'll see.
Joe Biden, the gaming president.
Yeah, that's funny, but yeah. So I think that this is a promising thing. It might sort of foretell conventions coming back sometime after that, and people taking precautions and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah,
a portent, if you will.
Yes. A portent. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Yeah, so that's that. In other news, so Cliff, you had something about a Kickstarter, Zine Quest.
Yeah, news from Kickstarter. Zine Quest 3 has been announced. It's the 3rd annual Zine Quest. And to explain what that is, I'm just going to read this from Kickstarter. Our annual Zine Quest prompt bestows creators with this valiant mission. Bring your RPG to life with maps, adventures, monsters, comics, articles, and interviews. To participate, launch a 2-week project for a simple, single-color zine this February. Yeah, so the requirements are your product that you're creating as a single-color zine. Zine being, I forget the exact requirements of the paper, but they posted fewer of those requirements this time. This is about as in-depth as they get with the details that I could find. So yeah, no flashy multicolor photographs or anything like that. Just old school RPG based zine. And if you meet those requirements, Kickstarter will sort of group you with the Zine Quest the other Zine Quest projects as sort of a promotion, and it's a lot of fun. It's a good way to get your foot in the door with some sort of RPG design ideas, whether you're making something up for an RPG that you already play or making something up entirely new. I think it's worth doing. I wasn't going to do it last year, and then halfway through February, somebody just on Twitter suggested it, and I was like, oh, what the heck? I've got a game design idea, and I did it, and that was a lot of fun. So if you're at all interested in getting into game writing or game design, why not try out launching your own Zine Quest Kickstarter campaign? You can go ahead with very low stakes, and you get some neat indie products out of it. There's a lot of really unique stuff that was created through the last 2 Zine Quests.
Yeah, cool.
I'm actually going to consider that for lo-fi cigarettes.
Oh, that'd be perfect for it.
Yeah, because that was a game that, I mean, I created last year, and the year before that. Holy crap. And I've always meant to give it like a treatment, but yeah, that's possible. Okay.
All right.
Whatever.
Yeah, I did it last year. It was a lot of fun. I put a very low goal because really the only costs I had to cover were I'm printing the stuff off my printer and stapling together and shipping them off. And a lot of the people just took the PDF option as well. But that's one of the requirements of Kickstarter is that you have to have a physical product as part of your end goal with the campaign. So you can't just do a PDF. You have to plan to spend some time figuring out how to set up a zine and print it out and staple it. But I got to tell you, it took me a while to figure out it was both harder and easier than I thought it would be. And it was definitely easier than it should have been. All of that on my shoulders for not figuring out the right buttons to press.
I didn't know that. So that's a Kickstarter rule in general that you have to have something physical?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Unless it's changed or I'm misinformed. But I'm pretty sure I read that a Kickstarter campaign has to be for a physical product. So if you're doing a music album, you have to have, CDs or something. I think if I were to do a music one, I would want to put some out on like tape, like old school cassette tapes.
What was the thing that you did on Zine Quest?
Yes, that leads into my other headline. The thing I did for Zine Quest 2 last year is Funny Freakout. And up until now, that game has only been available to the backers of the Kickstarter and a few friends of mine. And I also have given it away to patrons of the Arcology podcast. But this last week, I released Funny Freakout to the public on itch.io. So I'm going to just go ahead and read from the itch.io page for Funny Freakout and tell you what it is. Funny Freakout is a rules light, fast, and funny party game designed as a tabletop RPG. Your goal is to pull off the funniest, weirdest prank you can on an unsuspecting mark. You'll also need to avoid letting the mark get too suspicious and make sure they have a good time in the end. The game master plays the role of the mark, keeps score, and generally tries to make things interesting for the actors. And unlike most other RPGs, the players are in control of the setting and pace of the prank. It's their show after all. The GM's role is to react and respond to them through the lens of a single character. It's created by Clifton Lambert. That's me, my writer name. Originally for Kickstarter Zine Quest 2 event. And last week, Rem Alternis featured Funny Freakout in an actual play on Twitch that I took part in. It was a lot of fun. Check out twitch.tv/masterofrem to see the video on demand of that. And the game itself is available in PDF format on itch.io. Just search Funny Freakout on itch.io. Or I've got a link here as well that I think Bobby's posting into the chat. Cost is $5, but community copies are available. And what community copies are free copies that are available to anyone who wants to get the game but can't spare the funds to purchase it.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I wrote and released an RPG. And people played it on a stream. It feels really good to have that happen, and also to have the game played in a way that, I mean, it's kind of how I imagine people would play it. Mm-hmm. Even though they did fun and unexpected things too, which is part of it.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Go ahead.
No, I love that the GM is the butt of the joke in this.
Right. Yeah, there were a couple ways I sort of, I guess, flipped or subverted regular RPG conventions with this. One of it being that I guess one of the sparks of the idea for this game was I wanted to toy with the idea of coming up with an RPG design that in which violence had absolutely no role to play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that I really love that because that kind of leads to what I think is really cool about this. Specifically, it's put really well in your description that you read, which was you'll need to avoid letting the mark get too suspicious and make sure they have a good time. So that kind of like rules out,
Killing them.
Yeah.
or just being
bad.
generally cruel and abusive.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I like that it's a good-natured, fun pranking that you're doing, and you're not like encouraging people to be assholes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, it's largely inspired by a show called Scare Tactics, which is similar idea. They get a mark, usually someone who's been nominated by a friend or relative of theirs, and they set them up for something and try to freak them out. But their goal is also to make it safe and to have them look back on the experience like a wild ride. So that's definitely where I took some of the inspiration from. And yeah, I wanted to make a game that was about sort of good feels and having fun. And it's I think it turned out pretty neat. I still keep coming up with ideas for how I'd like to improve it, but I feel like it's in a good place as well.
Is it like a campaign style game, or is it just more of a like single session kind of thing?
I didn't hit the stretch goal for campaign mode, so these are more of like a sort of a beer and pretzels casual party game,
Sure.
low to no prep, get some people together and have a wild time, sort of RPG.
That's awesome. You know how we've talked before how much we here love that type of stuff anyway. So awesome. You guys should check it out. It's on itch.io, you said? Funny Freakout?
Yep, itch.io, and as I said, there are free copies available. When they run out, I'll just add some more. I'm just putting limited amounts in just to kind of keep track of, how popular the game is.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, my goal is that no one should be denied being able to grab the PDF and play the game because they can't spare the $5 to buy it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of things that we've talked about before, Oz, you had something you wanted an update you wanted to tell us about.
Yeah, so, and since we're talking about zines, this kind of like tails nicely into it. So the Mörk Borg cult zine called Heretic has exceeded its Kickstarter goal tenfold. So this is actually the second Kickstarted zine from the Mörk Borg cult, so I didn't know about this. The first one was called Ferratory, which was also a major success. This one, its approximately $12,000 goal was met in 7 minutes, and it's gone to attain over 2,000 backers, and as of this recording, over $115,000. It comes with 4 adventures, 2 new classes, 3 optional rules, and 5 creatures, all created by the Mörk Borg cult, which is fan-made content selected by the Mörk Borg team to get the full doomsday art punk design and layout treatment of its main content. Some are already available for free on morkborg.com, while others are going to be exclusive to the zine. Higher pledge levels are also going to come with an official Mörk Borg GM screen and a mysterious box called Ikon, I think is how it's pronounced. It contains things about 4 almost forgotten gods. There's also other add-ons, such as the previous zine Ferratory, an additional dungeon crawl / murder gauntlet, and my personal favorite, a pad of character sheets, since they die a lot, apparently. I did a segment about Mörk Borg and its Mörk Borg cult business model back in September, and I predicted that it would see tremendous success if they actually went ahead and pulled off what they said they would do. And I mean, so much so, in fact, the success is that Mörk Borg's Twitter account recently stated that there were too many amazing submissions to make official, so they had to pause submissions in order to catch up. And they've suggested that in the meantime, creators can continue creating and releasing their content using the third-party license. And I gotta say, I'm very impressed. This is exactly what I think indie RPGs up and coming should be doing. It's about continuing to empower your fan base to create and to treat them as equals as well, right? Like if you're enough of a fan to create something like that and make it really good, that you get it published and the whole treatment, I mean, that's fantastic. It's a slow rollout, right? You're not going to be the next D&D or whatever overnight. But I think this is the way to go. So I'm still very interested in following this business model.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Are they compensating any of the writers for that? Like, if it's a fan-made stuff, are they just taking it and then publishing it?
I forgot how their model works. I want to say yes.
Because like
They do?
that's
I believe so. What they do is they take certain things that people have made and submitted for it, and they, with their permission, they produce them with the full art style of the original, and they they put the full art style of their own materials. So they put all their layout and art behind it, and they post it up on their website under the Mörk Borg cult section, all free, available to download.
But I want to say yes.
I don't see the problem with that. It seems
I want
like,
to say that they do pay them.
I'm not sure if they pay or not, but I know the end result is that it's free. I think the other thing being is that you are still welcome to then essentially sell it on your own as a third-party RPG product. But I'm not sure.
If that's the case, that seems really on the up and up. That seems really cool. But if they're just making $100,000 off of content that other people wrote, that sounds like whoa. Maybe that's not like a stellar business model, or at least for the people who wrote it.
If I recall correctly, yes, they do pay. Like there is a fraction. So basically, it's encouraging. It's kind of like the what's it called, the D&D guild, DM's guild model, right? Like you can put up content and sell it for whatever you want. So, but in this case, they're curating the content. Like they select the content.
It feels a little awkward to say this, but if you'd like to know more about that, we did do a segment about it.
Right.
It feels awkward to say it because it seems that all of us have forgotten the details of that segment. But
it was a long time ago. It's been a long year.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I remember I was very inspired by that segment and by Mörk Borg. I went and bought the PDF and I checked it out. And while I'm not planning on submitting to their Mörk Borg cult items, I am working on another RPG that is a hack and slash of Mörk Borg. So it'll be using their third-party license and a lot of their rules ideas, but also going with a different genre of metal.
Yeah. So that's really cool. And if you want to know details about how their business model works, go check out the video that we've forgotten that we did. And yeah, Opti, you got something about sort of peanut butter and jelly of the RPG world.
Yes. Get your Pathfinder out of my savage worlds. Yeah, so I'm not sure if you have heard, but they're the Pinnacle Entertainment Group is marrying two rather popular RPG things together. And they are using the Pathfinder setting, and they're giving it Savage Worlds rules. So I know a lot of people like Pathfinder and a lot of people like Savage Worlds. So this seems like a fun thing for those folks. That's coming to Kickstarter in just 2 days, Tuesday the 19th. Looks like they have a box set planned with what they describe as the usual Savage World accessories, and a second box based on the Rise of the Rune Lords set of Pathfinder adventures coming as well. Now, looking at this, when I was looking into how this is happening and what's going on, I came across something else interesting, and that is Pathfinder had an adventure path called Kingmaker. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. It's like one of their most popular ones. There you go. Okay. Well, there's a hardcover Kingmaker adventure path source book coming out supporting the Kingmaker adventure path, a hardcover release that's expected for 2021, and it ships in 2 editions. One is for the Pathfinder first edition, and the second is for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. So I don't see anything revolutionary about a new setting for Savage Worlds, right? Like this is people do this all the time. Like there's all sorts of Kickstarters, there's all sorts of games. And there's nothing particularly interesting or new about a new book full of monsters for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Like that stuff is going nuts as well. But what I do think is interesting is the sort of cross branding that's going on. And I'm kind of two minds about it. On the one hand, like, why not? It seems like a relatively easy cash grab if you just want to market to fans of both properties. But I also sort of get uneasy about things merging, especially when big guys start to work together. And I know in RPG industry where, you know, the big guys are still really small guys, but Paizo and Pinnacle are not indie, right? They've been doing stuff, you know, for a long time. Pathfinder, especially, Paizo is one of the hugest, you know, ones in the RPG. And Pinnacle's, you know, I don't know exact numbers, but they're probably not too far behind Paizo. But them doing stuff like this confuses me a little bit. Like, were there people asking for this? I know it seems like a slam dunk to me, even though I don't, you know, play either one. But if so, does putting out products for 5e or licensing to Savage Worlds, like, what does that gain Paizo? Like, what are they? Is it exposure? I'm just a little bit not confused, because I can definitely think of reasons. I just don't know why they would start doing that.
I mean, there's a lot of ancillary products that you can get for Pathfinder, right? Like as far as minis and playmats. I mean, they have so many playmats and different products like that, if you release it in a system that is more appealing to people that wouldn't play Pathfinder, because, you know, everybody says Pathfinder is super complicated, but they already like Savage Worlds, and this lets them get into it easier. Same
you can
thing
still
with,
do
like,
the merchandising. Is that what you're saying? If
absolutely. You know. Yeah. And it's the same reason, like, I mean, we had a new segment a while back about, you know, the that one company that's doing My Little Pony and G.I. Joe and all that stuff for D&D 5e. Like, why? And it's because it's, that, again, super easy.
This feels like a defeat for Paizo. Like, in my head.
Really?
Right?
To me, it feels like Paizo's making a really smart move. They got all these adventure paths created, which are really detailed, long story campaigns that could be very easily adapted to another system and then be purchased by a whole new range of customers who aren't interested in touching Pathfinder, but might be up for playing the adventures if it's presented to them in a system they're familiar with.
Yeah.
And on
Also,
that note,
did you know that FASA has an Earth Dawn player's guide in Savage World Edition?
I did not know that.
There are Earth Dawn products, available in PDF form that have been for years. I think it's an earlier version of Savage Worlds, but just thought I'd mention that crossover.
Yeah. So on that note, I mean, something I also think is interesting is Rise of the Rune Lords is a 1st edition campaign, right? And so is Kingmaker. So like it seems like now that they have 2nd edition Pathfinder, that it's a way for them to be like, okay, anybody who already is a Pathfinder fan has already played these adventures. I mean, these are like staples, right? But so there's no point in releasing them for a 2nd edition. But if you release them in a different system, then you get people that are playing this adventure path and buying the ancillary products that come with that adventure path. So I can see why that would be
it strikes me, and again, maybe this is my perception from the outside, that Paizo essentially exists as a company in reaction to negative Dungeons and Dragons experience.
Absolutely,
right?
It did.
I mean, that's how they got their start. Absolutely.
Right. So them kind of going like, like at this point, they're like, "Well, hey guys, can't help noticing that you made a good product. Mind if we play with your ball again?" Right? It just feels like, I don't know.
Here's what seems like maybe weird to me about what I'm wondering about Paizo. Is they just came out with a whole new edition of Pathfinder, but they're putting this book out for everything but their new edition.
1st edition and D&D, their main competitor. Yeah.
Did they just give up on 2nd edition Pathfinder? That would be like,
that's what
like
I thought was
Catalyst going,
weird.
Okay, nobody liked 6th edition. Let's go back to 5th now. Like, what?
Well, I mean, again, that just still creates interest in, if you're playing in a different system, but you're playing in that world, it's like, okay, well, what about the second? I heard that Pathfinder has an edition made for this. Maybe that's better, right? For whatever else they're coming out with new, right? So like you play all the classic stuff in a new system, and then you go to second edition to Pathfinder to, I don't know. I feel like there's sort of a,
the whole thing is like good on Paizo to the extent that this means that they are just open to doing cool stuff with other companies. But then scratching my head, like, what is this? Like, what's really going on here? Like, why are we seeing this? I don't have any good answers. I don't know if it's good or bad for the industry, but I did think it was worth discussing and pointing out that Paizo seems to be like, hey, we have no shame. Let's do whatever. It doesn't matter. Because I feel that. Like, I feel that sort of vibe.
A couple comments from the chat from Daryl saying to the best of his knowledge, this was Pinnacle approaching Paizo to license the setting and content. And also mentioning they're not slouching on Pathfinder 2nd Edition. They're just focusing on new content rather than updating older content. So
Well, cool.
thanks for that input, Daryl. Daryl writes for Ian World, so check out his column on there.
Yeah.
Feel free to throw a link in there, Daryl. We won't send the mod bots after you. I don't think we have any, actually.
We have a mod bot, and all we ever do is tell the mod bot to calm down.
Okay.
But anyway, that's going to be it for news this week. Again, if you've got some news items you'd like us to talk about, then go on over to our Discord server, shadowcasters.network/Discord. Drop them in there. News suggestions. We have a channel for it, and we'll talk about it on the show. Thank you guys, and we'll have some more news next week.